For our last story tonight, let's stay with the topic of defense, but more specifically military. Here is a list of 5 nations: America, Russia, China, India, and Britain. Let me ask you, what's in common? What's common in their militaries? You'll probably say what's common is their strength. These 5 nations have the strongest armed forces in the world. And you'd be right in saying this. But there is one more commonality, a crisis that they share. Not of money or weapons, but of people. The 5 strongest militaries in the world have a recruitment crisis. Take the Bangladesh Armed Forces. Their troop strength has been falling. And now they are at a record low, the lowest in 200 years. So 2 warships will be decommissioned this year from the British Navy. There aren't enough officers to man those ships. Fewer people are joining the forces, more fully trained soldiers are leaving, and some of the top ranks are going vacant, like that of the Royal Navy's Rear-Admiral. This is the 6th promotion an officer can reach. It is 2 promotions away from becoming Admiral, the highest rank in the Navy. So being Rear-Admiral is a big deal. You're responsible for elite operations, for managing the nation's nuclear deterrent, basically highly classified projects. That's what you do, that require a certain amount of stealth. So one would expect the recruitment to be stealthy too, except it is as blasé as it gets, because the Royal Navy is in troubled waters. It's not been able to hire for the position, so the sailors were forced to cast a wider net, and they've advertised on LinkedIn. The position of Rear-Admiral has been advertised on LinkedIn, the professional networking site. And if you think this is weird, then look at the American military. They're facing an unprecedented recruitment crisis too. They have missed the hiring goal by 25%. The military's ranks are going empty, whether in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. So America is resorting to TikToks to hire recruits. And then we have the Russians. Compared to the Americans, their methods may sound boring. They're putting up the ads on billboards, urging people to swap the job of a taxi driver or a security guard for that of a so-called warrior. Meanwhile, the Chinese military has an unusual target, not Taiwan, not North Korea, or Winnie the Pooh cartoon. It is targeting green graduates from civilian colleges. In a first, China is looking for fighter pilots there. In another first, women can apply too. And speaking of colleges, India too is taking that route. The Indian military has over 150,000 vacancies, 150,000 vacancies. So the government is holding lectures in schools and colleges, trying to motivate the youth into joining the forces. As I said, there are too many jobs and not enough people to fill them. In some ways, the military have a good problem to solve. At least there are opportunities. Do you know what's worse? When there aren't enough jobs to start with, not just in the forces but across industries, it can go down in 2 ways. In some nations, chaos erupts. Ask these African countries. They have the worst employment rates in the world, and things are turning bloody for them. The lack of jobs in Africa is driving recruitment for armed groups. 25% of terrorist recruits there say they joined because they needed money to survive. That's one scenario. This is what joblessness leads to. The other option is that people escape. Brain drain is an unhappy consequence of lack of jobs, which currently troubles the happy nation of Bhutan. The Bhutanese are considered generally content, except when it comes to job opportunities. The youth unemployment rate stands at 29%, so the young are looking for better opportunities elsewhere, especially in the land down under. 15,000 Bhutanese were issued visas for Australia last year, which is a record, 15,000. That's more than the combined number of 6 preceding years. It's also about 2% of the kingdom's population. So my point is quite simple. If the world's job market were on a map, it would be a complex, paradoxical picture. People have degrees no one cares for, looking at you, liberal arts, but also MBA. It was once a ticket to corporate corridors, but now it seems to be losing that value. Meanwhile, there are mass layoffs for jobs people love. There are mass vacancies for positions people don't want. All of this makes one thing quite clear. The global labor market is a puzzle, and today it faces a mismatch.